Welcome to season 13 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we have with us Coach Marcy Hendricks, who is based in the Chicago area. Marcy is a longtime coach, without giving away her age, a longtime tennis coach who has lived through her own tennis journey and has been working tirelessly to help children learn the game of tennis, excel at the game of tennis, and go on to play in college, hopefully, or maybe even on the tour. She has an incredible resume. She has sent over 200 kids to college on scholarship. She was the girls 18s Fed Cup captain, Fed Cup coach. She's run sectional camps with USTA and through her region in the Midwest. She has been the Battle of the Sections coach, and she currently serves on the USTA Coaches Commission board and is a strong advocate for coaching education and better coaching education in this country. So I'm really excited for y'all to hear from Marcy. Before I bring her on, just quickly a reminder, if you haven't registered for our virtual conference coming up on June 9th, the link will be in the show notes. Please register. We have some incredible speakers, some incredible topics that I know are going to help all of you do a better job as you go through this junior tennis journey. So now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Coach Marcy Hendricks. Parenting Aces is providing this podcast as a public service. Reference to any specific product, service, or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Parenting Aces, Lisa Stone, or Fit for Two Inc. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program is not and does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Always do your own due diligence before purchasing, hiring, or using any product, service, or provider. Marcy, it's so nice to meet you and so nice to have you on the podcast. And I'm so grateful that you reached out to me because getting female coaches on this podcast has been a frustrating challenge for me.
Yeah.
And B, you have so much great experience to share with our audience that I think this is an invaluable opportunity to learn from you and from our audience to get a little bit different perspective.
Great. Well, it's great meeting you too, and thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So, as I do with all my first timers, I want to just ask you to share a little bit of your tennis story. How did you get started in the sport?
Okay. Well, I actually got started. My parents both played tennis, just very recreational. So they would hit with me a little bit after, they would be playing with their friends. I eventually got put into classes. I told my instructor I was actually left-handed for the first like 3 or 4 weeks, and my parents, they showed up and they were like, "Wait, Marcy's actually right-handed." And so I think I always heard my father say something, lefties, big lefty serve. Anyway, so it just kind of took off from there, and I went on to play national high level national tournaments and did my fair share of traveling and working at, training at some academies. I also worked with a very good coach from Indianapolis. His name is Jeff Smith from Smith Tennis. And so it just kind of took off from there. I played at Purdue University. I ended up tearing my rotator cuff and had a pretty long surgery, and decided at that time I was done with tennis until I got an office job. And then I was sitting in an office for, I don't know, 9, 10 hours a day. And I was like, oh, can't do this. I'll go back to I'll try teaching tennis. And so I started teaching tennis pretty much right out of college, and why I was looking for other work, and I just loved it, and I kept staying with it. And then I kept developing players, and it just kept coming. And here we are today, 30 years later, and it's been a great journey, and I've loved every part of it. And it's been nice to see the other side of the trench as a coach, because I've seen both sides, of the trenches, as a player and as a coach.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. And, Yes, there are coaches that never reached a high level in junior tennis or playing college tennis, and they're great coaches. You don't have to
Right.
be a great player to be a great coach.
Very
But I
true.
also think that it's got to be helpful to have gone through a similar experience to what your students are going through and to be able to relate to them.
Most definitely. I mean, I know what it's like to get nervous. I know what it's like to lose your forehand or, to be upset or angry. And so I think that just having excuse me, going through those emotions, I've been able to help my students on that end too.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to just address the elephant in the room at the get-go, which is the fact
Yeah.
that you are a female coach in
Yep.
a sport dominated by male coaches.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges that you face personally and that you see your female peers facing in this industry?
Great question. I mean, honestly, I think that sometimes one of the things that I've noticed is, female coaches aren't capable of teaching high level boys tennis or men's tennis, which is completely untrue. Um, Sometimes your own community puts you in that corner. And I've actually been very lucky and fortunate to be able to have worked with some of the top boys from the Midwest. But, as time has gone on, I've just seen less and less females, doing high performance tennis and developing players. And I think it is a man's world, and you kind of have to be strong, very strong willed. But I will tell you, been very fortunate to be surrounded with a lot of supportive men that have supported me through the tennis. But I'm not going to say that I didn't have to come out here early on and prove myself, because I did. I proved myself with the results of my students, and going out and running and working these USTA camps and just inputs. And so there was and I'm still proving myself, but for the most part, I think I've earned that respect, but it was tough for a long time.
Yeah. In your opinion, does gender of the coach and gender of the player matter in terms of being a good fit?
No, not at all. Not in my opinion, no. Um, do you have to understand the difference between, men's tennis and women's tennis? Absolutely. There's a different mentality there. There's different technique, different footwork, different movement, so you have to understand that. But as far as personality wise, as I don't think that it doesn't matter. I mean, you can be
Mhm.
male or female and teach either or.
Do you feel like, or I should say, what do you feel like are some of the pieces that are missing in terms of coach education for women coaching boys and men
Mhm.
coaching girls?
Maybe the education purpose, what we're missing is kind of maybe support from the top.
Mm.
You don't. I mean, who was the pro that had a female coach
Andy
for?
Murray.
Yes, so he was the first one to do that. I don't know how long that lasted. Um, but there needs to be more of that happening, but also there needs to be more female coaches that are putting themselves out there and getting the education, and learning, both sides, women's tennis, men's tennis. But I think it has to come from the top. It has to be supported, and whether it be from your section or your district or national, it has to be supported from the top.
Mm.
And you can't start the stuff in your local area where that person's just a male coach or that person's just a female coach. And that's where sometimes you get put in a corner and you're like, oh no, no, that's not right. I just happen to have more girls right now, but
Mm.
I can go through and show you all the great guys that I've coached through the years too. So I just think that it needs to come from the top, the support. They need to hear it. I think the more we see it, the more it's just become normalized.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, again, as I said when we first started, it's been a challenge for me as a podcast host to find female coaches who
Yeah,
want to come on and talk about their experience. And I'm not sure, is that a cultural thing? I'm not sure what that's about, but I am very grateful to you for being
thank
willing to come
you.
on and share your experience, because I think, you know, boy and girl players need perspective from men and women coaches.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I
Totally
think
agree.
everybody has something to offer, and our kids become more well-rounded as players and as humans
Yep,
when they have authority figures, which a coach is an authority figure of both genders. It just
correct.
helps them be
Yeah.
better, more well-rounded people. So I love that. So one of the reasons you reached out to me, I think, is because you have some concern about what's going on with developing junior players into high-level collegiate athletes, professional players in this country. And as you said, you've been doing this 30 years, so you have some perspective to offer on how things used to be done and how they're being done today. And I would love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I have quite a few concerns, and I think that these concerns come from kind of maybe seeing, it's not the only reason we have a dip in participation of tennis. I think team sports and pickleball and other things have come about, but yeah, but I also think that there's less and less um, good coaches teaching good tennis, teaching the fundamentals, understanding the process. And, there was a day when I first started teaching. I mean, I thought I came in there. When I came in, I was like, I was a great player. I know how to do this. Looking back, Lisa, I didn't know anything. And I learned that pretty quickly, that didn't, it didn't matter all my years of on the tennis court. I needed to be on the other side now and really understand this process. So I absorbed myself into learning from everybody. I mean, if I had an opportunity to sit down and watch a lesson from, another great pro, or maybe a pro that lives 45 minutes, or go down to Florida, and I did that. Um, I worked with a guy named Jack Sharp for about 6 years. And I sat down and watched probably 50 of his lessons, didn't say a word, just observed, talked, so I think just my taking the own initiative and really educating myself has been a really big factor. But back then also, the USTA was putting on a lot of events and camps and stuff where you could go down and become educated. Here's different levels, whether it's, the fundamentals of understanding green dot tennis or orange ball, or taking a kid from green dot into the next level. I mean, there was just all types of different ways that you could learn, new drills, doubles drills. I remember going to Florida and watching Katrina Adams really teach us some really cool different drills with doubles, and hearing her talk. Jose Angueros, I sat with him at dinner once and just was able to like pick his ear about all these different philosophies and things. So the education, I feel, is just not available now. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it in our section, and I'm seeing it nationally. So I just that's what's failing us, I think.
Coach education, you're talking about specifically.
Well, yeah, I know that the USTA cannot, take on every single kid and every single coach. So that coach first has to have the initiative to say, "Hey, I want to learn." You know. However, um, what they had decided to do years ago was say, "Okay, well, we're going to pick some top coaches from the sections here. We're going to run these USTA camps, and we're going to put a national coach in those USTA camps, and we're all going to sit in a room. We're going to run these camps. We're going to invite maybe the top 12 kids. We have 24 kids from the maybe boys 12s, girls 12s. So we were picking out, some of the top kids around. Their coaches were invited to come and watch the camps. So they were being educated. They were allowed to come on the courts and kind of watch what we were doing and stuff. And it's just not happening anymore. It's not being funded. And so it's just kind of stopped. And also another great thing about we're also educating the parents.
Yeah.
So while the kids were down there playing, there was a national coach speaking to the parents, whether it be about tournaments or pre-match routines, post-match routines, and just anything across the board that can make our kids better. And I feel like the education has stopped.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've told this story before, but when I first started Parenting Aces, I was at a high level event and
Yeah.
I had the parent of one of the high level players introduce me to another parent. And she said, this is Lisa. She's got this website called Parenting Aces. She's trying to, help the parents learn how to navigate through this process. And this other parent says, well, USTA does that. And I looked at her and I said, yes, USTA does that for you, but it
Right.
doesn't do that for the masses. And
No.
nobody does that for the masses. And so even the situations that you're describing, Marcy, you're talking about 24 kids and 24 sets of parents that got exposed to that education. What
Yeah.
about the thousands of other kids in the section that are playing tournament tennis whose parents need also to have that information and learn?
Right. So that's where, you hope that when these parents come in, then they carry it out to other parents. And then I know it doesn't quite happen like that. But also when they bring, like they were allowed to bring like the kids brought their private coaches they were
Right.
working with. So you hope now that coach carries some information that they've
Yes.
learned into their working and maybe into their club. So it was kind of, this trickle down effect that we were getting somewhere with it. I mean, it was good. And we would hold, several of these camps, and it just wasn't just for 12s. I mean, we'd do one for 14s. It was different birth years,
Sure.
but again, it's just kind of stopped. It's halted. And I don't know if it has to do with funding. I'm not sure where the money is going.
Jose says it has to do with funding, right? I mean, that open letter he wrote,
Yes.
which I will link to in the show notes, by the way, for anybody that hasn't seen that, which can't imagine many people haven't seen it by now. It made its
Right.
rounds.
Yes.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, his philosophy is that the funding was cut and that was a big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, and not only are our juniors paying for it, I mean, even at, our top level pros now are having to go out and hire um coaches outside of the USTA and pay for, a whole nother team when really our country should be providing them. They've earned that. So, but yeah, going down from just a brand new 10-year-old starting, these parents are lost. I mean, they don't know what to do. And then if they turn to their coach, a lot of the coaches don't know what to do. And so when I go to these tournaments, I've walked into, I think I maybe mentioned this to you. I've been into a couple 12s and 14s tournaments, and Lisa, it was a whole new experience for me. There were kids really misbehaving, a lot of yelling, screaming, but also parents arguing with their kids down on the courts. And we've lost like the sportsmanship part of it, and the life lessons. I mean, tennis is supposed to bring you so many life lessons, and I just feel like those have gone to the wayside. It's just about, how can my kid win? How can my kid do this? And I understand. I just think that the journey that you take your kid through, you can make them the best that they can be, but you can also incorporate those life lessons.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just not happening.
Yeah. This is like the perfect time for me to plug our upcoming virtual conference that we're putting on June 9th. So all of you watching or listening to this, I hope if you have a child in junior tennis that you'll sign up for that conference. I'm going to have, again, the link will be in the show notes, but we are trying to educate parents and help you all navigate through this journey because it's complicated
It
and it's
is.
not a one size fits all situation, right, Marcy? I mean, this is one of the challenges.
Absolutely. Everybody has a different journey. I mean, that's part of, again, the education part is understanding, a lot of, you go to these tournaments and parents talk and they go, well, my kid's doing this and my student's doing this. Well, you kind of need to just look at your kid and see what's best for your kid. But like, as you mentioned before, you've also got to put your kid in the right hands. You want your kid to be with a coach, research that coach, look what they've done. Um, See, personalities, those have to match up. And there's so many good advantages with being with one coach. I've taught majority of the kids that I've taught from a young age until they've gone off to college. And actually I still teach them through college. So, but that's been such an advantage for me and them because I kind of know when to push and I kind of know when to pull, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like now it's like, oh, my kid is taking maybe a little slump down. Well, it's the coach's fault. I need to go look somewhere else, or we're doing this wrong. And it's like, that's just part of the journey. You have to understand the process. But I don't think they understand the process.
Right.
And I always say I work just as hard with my parents as I do with my students. And I want to make this journey a positive one. It should not be miserable. It should not be anxious and just like disastrous, like, oh, the ride home, and it can be a very positive thing. And we need to get back on track with that.
What do you want parents to ask you when they're considering hiring you to work with their child?
I want them to ask me, just as you did, my background, who have you worked with? Also, what is your philosophy? What do you believe? Are you only concerned about wins? Do you even care about the process? And by the way, I do very much. I think you have to go through it. Um, I want them to ask me, how available are you for my kid? Because I think being a coach is not just, seeing them a couple times a week and then not being there. I'm fully invested in my students. I make myself available. Um, by phone. Like a lot of my kids are at a tournament this weekend or next weekend. So I try to answer as many phone calls or texts and make myself available. So I think those are good questions to ask your coach. But more importantly, look at their history, and look at their continuing education. Like, what do you do to continue your education? And
Mhm.
I'm still absorbing. I learn from everyone,
I love that.
so
I love that.
yeah.
In your opinion, what's the role of the parent in the whole journey?
I think the parent plays a huge role. First of all, you need to be the number one supporter. You and it's hard. I get it. Like, it's hard to sit there and keep all your emotions under control and but I think that the kid needs to, a lot of parents will say, I don't care if you win or lose, just go have fun. But then when that kid walks off the court and they've lost, then maybe that kid gets like the silent treatment or not
Mhm.
talked to, or they don't get the lunch that they were going to get if they won. So then you're giving your kid mixed messages. So I think that it's important for parents to, you know give your kid the positive message, encourage them consistently. Now, if their effort's bad and their attitude's bad, you have every right to jump in there as a parent because those are controllable, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's a process. It's a process. It doesn't go from bad to perfect, and we have to understand that. And just like working on a forehand, it won't go from bad to perfect. So you're going to see a lot of in betweens and that stuff. So, but yeah, parents play a big role as far as being the supporter, and I think that um, I love when parents give me feedback after a tournament. I accept that stuff. I'm fine with it. Is it usually the same feedback the kids give me? No, it's usually two different feedbacks. But I can go off both are helpful.
Yeah. Well, so talking about that, how important is it to videotape tournament matches and share that with you as the coach? Is that something that you want, or is it a headache on your end?
It can be a headache for sure. I don't think that it's necessary to coach a bunch of tournament matches and do all that stuff, but every once in a while, if like for instance, I get a parent that comes back and they were like, wow, you've really worked on their forehand and it looks great when they do a lesson with you, but when they go into a tournament, the ball's going 40 feet in the air. And so then I may say, hey, give me 3 or 4 minutes or a few games and let me see what they're doing.
Hmm.
So that's when it comes in handy. If maybe there's a behavioral issue or a body language issue, the parents will kind of get a clip with that. But yeah, I don't want a bunch of videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really helpful to hear because I think I know when my son was playing, I would keep stats because it
Yeah,
occupied my brain and my hands, and it gave me
absolutely.
something to focus on that wasn't on the court.
Yep.
And it really helped me be a better tennis parent. But I never really knew if my doing that was helpful to the coach or if he was just kind of laughing behind the scenes that, oh, here she
Sometimes
goes
it
again.
is. Yeah. No, I think sometimes it is. And then, sometimes it can get really just overcomplicated where it's like unnecessary,
Yeah.
But I do understand you doing it for your own sake as well.
Yeah.
I know I used to teach a top player, and her mother would knit during matches. So she had a bunch of blankets and scarves and stuff. So that was just like a nervous energy thing, but I thought it was genius,
Yeah.
and then she got other parents knitting during matches.
I
So
love
it was
that.
funny. Yeah.
I
But
wish somebody had taught me.
I know. But now I see parents like they don't sit in one spot. Their kid switches sides, they move their chair over to that other side. And so as a parent, you don't want to look more invested than the kid, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's their battle. And so that's also another big thing is, you have to trust the process, trust your coach, and kind of let some things happen. And it's hard to do. I have 2 boys that are 11, and they don't play tennis, they play other sports, but one is a pitcher. And there's so many times I just want to stand behind that fence, but I've learned just to kind of sit in my chair and be calm and not give him anything to look at over here by me, you know. So it's difficult.
Well, it's funny because I've talked to a few coaches who have kind of had these aha moments once they have their
Mhm.
own children and their own children start to get involved in whether it's sports or the arts or whatever it
Yes.
is, and how it's helped them be more empathetic to the parents of the junior players that they're coaching. And it sounds like you've kind of had some of those aha moments yourself.
Oh my goodness, for sure. I mean, you know, I became a better tennis player once I had kids, for sure. Um,
Tennis player or tennis coach?
I'm sorry, a better coach.
Yeah.
Because you do have more empathy and you also understand how much money and time that these parents are putting in. So I think as a coach, you're going, I want to make their time valuable. I want to work hard for them. I want them to see results. So it makes your sense of urgency to get this kid better, higher, you
Mhm.
know. It's hard, it's expensive and time consuming, and you want the results and you want it to be a positive thing. But yeah, I think it's made me definitely a better coach
When you
being a parent.
say you want the results, are you talking about wins and losses in tournament matches? What are you
No,
talking about?
so maybe just results in fixing the serve, adding, being able to hit, a flatter serve, being able to hit a slice serve, being able to step inside the court, little victories, you know, all the little victories will equal out to the big victories. So when I say that, no, it's never based off wins and losses. It's just, again, incorporating or just making that next level step. You've got to be able to feel comfortable moving forward and transitioning into the net. And that's a very uncomfortable thing for a lot of like younger kids to do.
Mhm.
So, when we start doing that stuff, and I start thinking, okay, I've got to be able to get this kid comfortable with the net by the time, they get to at least 16s, because, also that's what college coaches want.
Yeah.
So, so there's a sense of urgency to get that stuff done.
Yeah. Yeah. In your opinion, what is the role of ratings and rankings in junior development?
Whew.
I know it's a loaded question. Sorry, I
No,
have to ask it.
no, I understand it. Um, you kind of have to play the game. You have to play to get into these tournaments anymore. It's very difficult to get into tournaments. They've cut down a lot of the draws to 32. Um, so you kind of have to play the points game. However, no one knows what points game to play. There's UTR, there's WTN, there's national standings, there's, so it's just, this is where I think a lot of confusion has come in as well. I just personally feel we need to go back to how it was. I mean, there was a day that, you had to play your qualifier,
Mhm.
and you had to do well in your qualifier in order to play the closed. And so then you would qualify for your Midwest closed, and then that would decide whether or not you got to go to nationals. So we now you don't have to do that stuff. I mean, there's just so many different. I'm not saying the different pathways are bad. It's just we're actually cutting out more kids
Mm.
rather than including more kids. So there's some great players that aren't getting into some level twos and level threes, and how are they supposed to get any points to go anywhere? So you have to play the points game a little bit, but I also think that kids need to play their local tournaments. you know I don't know. It's a very complicated question, and it's confusing, and like I said, it's you got kids at all different levels. So I may say, no, this kid, because their birthday's a certain day or a certain month, they need to now start playing more 16s. So maybe you start playing level fours and level five 16s. But if you play a level two or level one, you play in your age group.
Mm.
So none of my students are really, we don't dodge people. My kids know they complete tournaments. We don't withdraw from tournaments. That's another thing that's been out of control with, I think, the UTR system
Mhm.
is, all of a sudden someone, comes across someone maybe in the back draw, and they, you know, um, don't want to take that loss or take a chance of someone getting 7 games off of them.
Yeah.
I had a player last weekend that was playing a girl that was a point and a half UTR ahead of her, and she went up 3-0, and the girl withdrew. She said she was sick and walked
Mhm.
out. And I'm not saying, sometimes they are sick, that is true, but there's been so many withdrawals. If you look at these tournaments, and these parents are spending all this money and time and hotels, and sometimes you don't know those kids are withdrawing until you show up the next morning at 8 a.m. when you've already warmed up and had your breakfast and all that stuff. So there's
Yeah.
some problems with the ranking system.
Which is such a shame, because the underlying philosophy of UTR is to encourage play,
Correct.
to, encourage kids to push themselves outside of their comfort zone. But because we're dealing with algorithms, and because tennis parents are smart and tennis players are smart, they
Hmm.
try and figure out the algorithm and try and figure out how to maximize their kids' UTR, which, by the way, does not equate to maximizing their child's tennis ability, right?
Correct.
A
Correct.
number it's a number. It's not
Absolutely.
always accurate in reflecting the ability of the player.
That is very
And
true.
I think that's so sad that this is just kind of, the society we're in junior tennis.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, even sometimes kids don't play tournaments for 3 months and their UTR goes up,
Yeah.
and you're going, well, another kid's been playing for 3 months and they've played, 3 tournaments a month, and their UTR has dropped, so it's, it's just not, it's not a clear cut, like, this is what level you are. But,
Mhm.
now, like a tournament this weekend, they based it off of WTN. um, ranking. So it's a completely different seating if someone had been basing it off UTR or national
Right.
standing. So I don't know the answer to it. I just know that it's not working.
Yeah. My statement is always every time you work on your tennis, the goal should be to get 1% better. If you get
Yes.
1% better every time, those numbers are all going to take care of themselves in the end. But
Yeah.
you, the player, have to make the commitment to improving every single time you work on your game, whether that's in the gym, whether it's on the track, whether it's the way you eat, your sleep
Yeah,
habits,
absolutely.
whatever it is,
Yeah,
you
you're
know.
exactly right. And I think too, like a lot of college coaches, when I speak with them and stuff, they understand that this UTR or WTN isn't an exact reflection. And a lot of college coaches now are taking the time to come. I've had a lot come to my practices just to watch the kids.
Yeah.
And I think then they can get more of a feel of, oh, okay, this player really has a big first serve, or is really great up at the net. Um, so that's something that I think the college coaches are actually doing well, because I think they're stuck too. They're going, I don't really know if this measures up, and I'm passing up on someone that maybe could potentially be a better player. So, they've started branching out and watching practices and going to more tournaments, not just the level one tournaments. They're doing more than that. So that's been a positive.
Well, I'm glad to hear you validate what I have been telling parents for a while now, which is that the good college coaches are looking beyond the ratings and rankings. They're
They
looking
are.
at the whole athlete. They want to bring kids onto their team that fit their team culture, that they feel are coachable for them, and the personalities match up and all of that. And yes, that can help
Absolutely.
them win, because that's the ultimate job of the college coach, is to win.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They
So
want the
we
full
have to
package.
understand that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I want to go back to your role as junior Fed Cup captain
Okay.
and talk about the value of these team events in terms of overall junior development and helping kids get to a level where they can compete for college spots, where if they choose to go on tour, they are getting to a level where they can be competitive on the pro tour. We have seen the demise of a lot of team events, and then recently we're starting to see some team events come back. And
We are. Yeah.
what is the value of those?
Well, I mean, the value, one of the biggest values is obviously just being a part of the team. In tennis, you're usually out there by yourself. It's very individualized. But now you're not just playing for yourself, you're playing for the win for the team. And that becomes more fun. It's exciting. You got people cheering you on rather than, someone being like, oh, I want that person to lose. Or, yeah, it's just, you feel more supported.
Mm.
Um, Also, when I did the team events, it's different now than it was in the past, but when we did Fed Cup, it was just me and the girls. And then we would go there against the other sections, and it was just them and their coaches. No parents came. And the USTA funded this. They paid for their flights, they paid for their hotel rooms, and all the college coaches showed up. It was nice. We would have, maybe close to 100 college coaches that come out to this to watch
Wow.
these kids play. And it was a great warm up before they went down to San Diego and played hard courts for the girls. Um, and the guys played at Illinois, and so it was a great warm up for them before Kalamazoo. And but also it was just a team feeling. Afterwards, we went to dinner. We'd go to a movie, or we'd go play putt putt, watch a movie, order pizza. It was just fun.
Yeah.
And I think we need more fun. Kids play better tennis when they're relaxed, when they have people cheering them on. We've also got to play really some cool venues where they have center courts. So you may have a player get the opportunity to play a center court at Indian Wells, and that's a really cool thing to be able to do. Um, so I love the team events, and I think that we need to keep them going, and I do see them coming back. And it's just such a different pace and different thing from just a regular USTA tournament.
Yeah. Speaking of teams, let's talk about the role of high school tennis. You
Okay.
have coached a lot of kids that have gone on to play at some really good colleges.
Yeah.
We know that American juniors in particular are having trouble finding spots on some of these big school teams, the brand name schools. And, one of my recent missions has been to help educate parents around all the opportunities in college tennis, not just the name brand schools, because
Absolutely.
as you and I both know, there are some tremendous college coaches at not just
Oh,
D1 schools, but also D2, D3, junior colleges, NAIA schools. I mean, there are some
yes.
incredible opportunities. Where does high school tennis fit into that whole process of getting recruited to play in college?
So,
And let me just back up and say you're in the Chicago area.
yeah,
So, your mileage may vary based on where you are in the country and the
right.
competitiveness of high school tennis where you are.
Yeah. So high school tennis for me is if you get to go on a team and you have, let's say, a relatively good coach that knows how to run a practice and you've got other players to play against. I think it could be a great thing. And I think that a lot of kids enjoy doing high school tennis. However, if you go there and there's no one to hit with and there's no practice being ran, then it can also become a total waste of time.
Mm.
You know, um, the kids practice so hard all summer, and then if they go into their high school tennis, majority of their matches, if they're playing one for their team, are not competitive. Their practices really aren't competitive. So if they can balance both, if their high school coach says, "Hey, I allow you to still go to your group classes and your private lessons," then I think it can work. But during, that real important recruiting year, your sophomore going into your junior year, I think that, if there's just nothing to be gained, then you sit that out. That's
So
usually
I'm
what a
going
lot
to
of my students
play
do.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute and just
Yeah.
say, let's say that is the situation where, they're not getting competitive match play. They're playing number one, but the other teams in their division are, more
Right.
recreational or whatever. Is there something to be gained from playing those types of matches? And is there something that the kids can kind of take the initiative on to make that time valuable?
Yeah, I mean, you always have something to work on, right? So you can use those matches to work on things. And a lot of kids do. A lot of students will go out and, maybe serve volley or work on a bigger first serve or something like that. So, um, and I think also just representing their school. I had a girl that won the state last year, and she was full of pride. I mean, she was happy to go do that for her school, and she got a lot of recognition for it. I think that if high school tennis matches maybe counted towards some sort of ranking, whether it be your UTR or your WTN, I think we'd see more kids playing it.
Well, a lot of them
Um,
do now. UTR does capture a lot of high school tennis.
yeah,
Depends
that's
on where you
true.
live.
Yeah, they don't here yet.
Okay.
So a lot of like our high school tennis doesn't bring out our top players in the area.
Mhm.
So it's there's pros and cons of both of it. I really try to leave the decision up to the kid, but I will tell you again, if I got that kid that's teetering where it's like, I need to get you here, can we still do that with you playing high school tennis? So we sit down and map this out and see what we can do to still not exhaust that kid.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of time management, but also be able to have some flexibility with your tennis team. Because listen, at the end of the day, who wants to be on a tennis team and then never be show up for practice? I don't believe in that either. I don't think you
Right.
should just, you know, say, oh yeah, I play high school tennis, but I'm never there.
Yeah.
Like that's not
We
fair
don't
for
we
the
don't need the
team.
divas. We got
No, we
enough
don't
of
need
that.
that. It's not fair for the team or the coach and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can kind of incorporate both, then I'm all supportive. know that it can be really tough and time consuming, especially that junior year.
Yeah.
If you're, it's like you said, tennis players are smart, so they're taking a lot of AP classes, and it's just very busy.
Yeah, yeah, totally. All right, we're winding down our hour, so I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to share with our audience how to reach you, where they can find you, either for consult or to come for short-term or longer-term training.
Yeah.
Share all that with us. And by the way, all this will be in the show notes on parentingaces.com, so be sure and check it out for the
Okay.
links.
Yeah. So I have a Facebook page. It's called Hendricks Elite Tennis. Same thing with Instagram. My phone number's on there. My email. You can go to both sites to get that stuff. You can also just leave me a message on Messenger. I do run summer camps and have a lot of great players. Have kids coming from different states and all around, whether it be for a week or a few days. I also help a lot of kids with the recruiting process. I've been doing that for a long time. So anyone can reach out to me. I'm willing to help anyone that needs the help. I think, again, just the more education, the better. And hopefully that they can carry that into another person and help them out.
I love that. Marcy, it has been so great talking with you. I've learned a lot from you today about, the process, the challenges,
Yeah.
and, maybe thinking about what can we do moving forward to help our kids become better overall tennis players, better overall humans, but also help our coaches
Yeah.
become more complete in their knowledge and the way that they interact with players and parents for sure. So thank you for taking time to chat with
Thank
me.
you. Thank you so much. And Lisa, thank you for all that you do. And I know that your goal is the same. It's just all about education and helping everyone out. So I appreciate everything you do.
Thanks. To my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.